A lot to cover today. A lot of topics that I want to get your take on, but I guess we should probably start with yesterday and the hostages being returned to Israel, and Donald Trump, I think, rightly getting a little bit of a victory lap. What do you make of that, Charlie?
Yeah, look, I'm reading my newsletter about that this morning, and all garden party needs a skunk, and I'm willing to volunteer for that particular role. I mean, look, the jubilation real, the accomplishment, it's temporary, but it is very, very significant. So, yeah, give him his victory lap. But I do think it's important to remember a few things. I mean, it's sort of at moments like this is where you need to take a deep breath and take stock of things. The reality is that the Mideast is still the Mideast. Hamas is still Hamas. Netanyahu is still Netanyahu. And Donald Trump is still Donald Trump. Let's not turn this victory lap into a international moment of amnesia where we forget who he is, what he's doing, and what he's capable of doing in the future. Look, this is a great day. I mean, you have to have a pretty hard heart not to be joyful about the hostages. And yeah, I mean, Trump did make it happen, but it is a ceasefire. It is not a peace deal. And if you pull the lens back from the last week, like the last nanosecond, Mideast is the graveyard of these false peace deals and false springs. So lots of things can still go wrong. But let's not kind of forget that we're still dealing with Donald J. Trump, Vesuvius of corruption, cruelty, surrounded by that gaggle of grifters and tyrants and bonesaw murderers and people who've paid him off and all of that stuff. But I actually, you wrote something that I thought was actually kind of right. There is a real politique view of this that says that this is kind of Donald Trump's element, right? I mean, there is that thing that, in a world of gangsters and thugs, we need our own gangster and thug. So it was the man for the moment. You go into that, into this world of, bad actors who are completely transactional. And Donald Trump's style works there. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and so let me give credit to Joe. The first person I heard make this point was Jonah Goldberg. Other people have subsequently made it. But the theory is that Donald Trump's only real successes have come in the Middle East, and that's not a coincidence, because that's the one area where his style resonates, where they're transactional. It's about sort of dominance and saving face. And that Trump's worldview meshes very well with the way the Middle East operates, which might explain why normal American politicians have not had much success there. Trump, that's the one place where he seems to have actually, maybe found his calling.
Well, yes, they found his calling and billions of dollars in crypto bribes. And I mean, you see the scene there. There's Jared Kushner, who's been cashing in on the Middle East. You have Witkoff, who just, he and Trump just cut that big crypto deal with the UAE. And so, yes, previous presidents have failed because previous presidents have been governed by certain rules and norms that were accepted. Trump doesn't accept them. I guess the point is that in our celebration and victory lap, are we now going to go, okay, this is like the new normal? We actually need the most, corrupt bully on the block in order to make our way in the world. Again, very, very mixed. Give him his day, but let's not, let's not be pumping in the amnesia.
Yeah. And I'm sure there will be people who will make that argument that the world is a dangerous place. He's an SOB, but he's our SOB. But I don't think that's going to, I think the people who've bought into that argument have probably already bought into that argument at this point.
Yes.
And it's competing with
it's also temporary. I mean, here's the other thing is, I mean, it's like, what comes next is so complex. And a lot of it does rely upon the goodwill of some of the worst, most malicious actors on the planet right now. I mean,
we're in phase 1 of 20, I think, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But not only I think you're totally right, Charlie, that this is just the beginning. And if history's taught us anything, it's that the Middle East is fraught with danger. But even just as a news story, I mean, Donald Trump lived by the sword, died by the sword. He has created this environment where nothing really sustains. There is so the idea that this is the turning point. This is the day that Donald Trump became president.
Mhm.
I've got a stack of things that would that would undermine that premise.
This is a great point. I mean, one of the great accomplishments of the Trump era, by the way, I'm doing the air quotes here, is our incredibly short attention span. Is that no news story, with the possible exception of the Epstein files, weirdly enough, will last for more than a week. And you and I will be sitting here next Tuesday, and it's certainly possible to go, "Hey, Matt, do you remember back in the before times when we thought that that Mideast deal was a big turning point? Do you even remember that?" Because this is the zone, and again, your point, the zone is flooded, and Donald Trump has been the master of the distraction.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, he's given us, the attention spans of goldfish.
Even, I mean, and even stories that are insane and that Trump would want to perpetuate are fleeting. I mean, how long ago was Charlie Kirk assassinated? It feels like a year ago at this point. I don't think it was that long ago, but yes, things are. You know, this is the downside if you're Trump, I guess. He can't get things to resonate either.
Well, and again, it's sometimes I think we do need to take a longer view on all of this. The success or failure of this was not determined yesterday. The hostages are back. Hamas is not disarmed. What happens if Netanyahu starts bombing again? What happens if the violence kicks up? What happens if the aid workers are kicked out? There's so many things that can happen. I mean, the notion that, and now we move on to the next 19 points. Take a look at what is left of Gaza, the reconstruction of Gaza, and a peace plan in Gaza in the current environment. Good luck with that. But and again, I was reminded again that Donald Trump is uniquely ignorant of history when he's sitting there and Marco Rubio trying to suck up and says this is the biggest deal in 50 years, and Trump says, well, why not 100 years? And then he signs it and he says it takes thousands of years to do it. It's like I suppose that may be one of his superpowers, that he has no memory, no context, but it also means that he probably has no idea of what lies ahead and how incredibly hard it's going to be. I
And
mean,
meanwhile, you've
the,
got it feels like, Charlie, that the resistance is starting to gain some steam. I've got a bunch of stories we could talk about here. The Marjorie Taylor Greene is sort of speaking out against MAGA, or not even MAGA, but against some of Trump's policies and decisions. You've got several airports refusing to play Kristi Noem's kind of propaganda video at
good
airports,
for
where she
them.
blames Democrats for airport delays. We've got several, almost all the mainstream media outlets refusing to go along with this pledge that the
Correct.
Pentagon wants them to sign. And then we've got the No King's Day coming up. So I don't know which of these stories you want to start with, but it seems like there's a trend. Oh, and the other one, by the way, I think there's an increasing sense that Democrats may actually be winning the government shutdown fight, such as it is. So I don't know
Weirdly
what,
enough.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's start briefly with the No Kings rally, which I think is going to be big, and I think is important because constantly people are saying, well, what can we do? What can we do? When are people going to stand up against Trump? The fact is that right now there are few tools for the average American. What can the average American do? They can turn out. They can turn up for those rallies. But what I'm struck by is this talking point that apparently is universally now accepted among Republicans, that they need to call this the Hate America rally, or that this is like Antifa somehow. I mean, Sean Duffy, who just, I'm sorry, reminds us, how profoundly stupid he is in a cabinet of stupid people, you know, talks about, who's funding this, and throwing in Antifa to all of this. Look, in an alternative universe, you'd say, you know what, this is what makes America great, is that we welcome we welcome dissent, we welcome peaceful protest. And by the way, is there anything more fundamentally, pro-American than saying no kings? Aren't we a
Yeah.
country? founded. We are America, the United States of America, because we rejected kings. So this whole attempt to demonize it is, I think, politically stupid, but completely consistent with their attempts to delegitimize the opposition and perhaps provide a little bit of permission for a law enforcement crackdown. I'm hesitant to go too far on all that, but if you convince millions of Americans that these rallies are hate America rallies or Antifa rallies, that does not seem to be a call for peaceful dissent or a disagreement, does it?
No, I went to the last one in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, a little college town, the eastern panhandle of West Virginia, and it was there was a big turnout, but the vibe was like a Fourth of July celebration or something. It felt very American, very homespun, like Americana, very patriotic, very
Yeah.
communal, not angry at all.
Okay, so this is really an important point. And by the way, I'm going to show up this Saturday in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, with a group of people. And I think that the best way to counter this sort of Trumpian spin, which even Mike Johnson is doing, I mean, they've all been told, call it the Hate America rally, which I think is just dumb, is bring lots of flags. I think the best
And
refutation.
American flags.
Oh
Let's
yeah,
just
oh
say.
yes, absolutely American, lots of American flag, because you know what? It's our fucking flag. It is not their flag. I think one of the things that we have to do is we have to take back patriotism. We have to take back love of country. We have to take back that flag. And I think the symbolism of people saying no kings, pro-American, anti-Trump, with American flag is the best refutation. It calls them out. So I hope and actually kind of expect that they will do that. Obviously, it's absolutely essential that they be nonviolent. But what we've seen increasingly has been a willingness on the part of the Trumpian agents to act as agent provocateurs, to actually seem like goading
Yeah.
people into. But as you point out, a lot of these are going to take place in small towns. Local police are not going to hassle them. But I do think these things are very important.
And aside from embracing the American flag, which I think this is a patriotic thing to do, no kings, obviously. Um, there's been this other thing, Charlie, that's happened where we had this preacher in Chicago who was shot in the head with like a pepper ball.
Mm.
And the pictures, I think, are like iconic. And it makes me wonder, with that coupled with the Pope's recent comments, um, if there's a chance that there could also be a faith-based movement as well against what's happening, especially as it pertains to rounding up immigrants with ICE. So if you've got the patriotic element and then you've got a faith-based element, that becomes there's like you make a moral case of peaceful resistance.
It's really interesting that you bring that up, because right before we went on the air, I was reading an account of what the Pope has been saying. The American Pope, the Pope from Chicago. And I think this is still an undercovered story, that you have the American Pope who is telling the bishops that they need to be more aggressive in standing up for migrants against ICE. He gave a talk about the importance of the free press yesterday. Talking about post-truth propaganda. This Pope is preparing to engage, is engaged, has already engaged, and will engage with the church. So you're making a really interesting point here. What if the face of the opposition are people wielding American flags, and priests and nuns and people in the faith-based communities saying, no, I'm sorry, we're not only taking back patriotism, we're going to take back Christianity from you folks as well. Incredibly powerful. And by the way, let's go back to the 1960s civil rights movement. Really, that movement really was led by, men and women of faith, and it was tremendously powerful. The other points you made are also significant, and I think we ought to just give a shout out to the major media outlets that almost
Yeah.
as one
I got a list
said,
here, Charlie.
yeah, said no to Pete Hegseth's anti free press rules, and virtually every one of them said
Yeah.
no.
The
We are
only
not signing on.
It's the Washington Post, New York Times, AP, CNN, Newsmax, even Newsmax said no. The Washington Times, NPR, The Atlantic, The Guardian, The Wall Street Journal, Reuters, Task and Purpose, Breaking Defense. I think the only one that we know of who has signed on to this is OAN
Yeah,
so
what a
far. That's a
surprise.
victory. That's a victory. And Charlie, let me add to
Thank
your
you.
list
Yeah,
when it comes to you were talking about civil rights leaders in the 1960s who were like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who I
yeah.
think were dominating. And there's a great book I would recommend, Malcolm Gladwell's David versus Goliath, has a whole chapter on the civil rights aspect of that. But don't forget Pope John Paul II stand up against communism
Correct.
and
Yeah.
summoning his platform and kind of making the moral case, going to his home country of Poland, um, and being kind of a beacon of hope and resistance there, and someone that was inspiring. I mean, I don't know where this is headed in America, but
Well, when the Pope was elected, when Pope Leo was elected, I actually made that. I said, again, we don't know why the Cardinals chose him, but there are these pivotal moments in history. When Europe was on the brink, they elected the Polish Pope, who had a tremendous role in the end of the Cold War. Now America's on the brink, and we have an American Pope. So the history is very, very powerful in that respect.
I didn't know you were obviously one step ahead of me once again, Charlie.
No, it's one of those where look, I mean, the other history, of course, is Joseph Stalin, who once quipped, well, how many divisions does the Pope have? How many tanks does the Pope have? And I'm sure that they felt that way in the Kremlin when Pope John Paul II was elected. And I'm sure that the Stephen Millers of the world, had the same sort of sneering. And yet, every once in a while, history will rhyme, and will remind us that you can have moral leadership up against, what appears to be this unstoppable authoritarianism. But back to the media, this was an important moment given all the other capitulations of corporate media to have them stand together in rare solidarity. I will say this, the bar's pretty low, that they basically are not, that American news media refuses to be censored by the government. Okay,
Mhm.
pretty low. But in this current environment, in this particular time, it did feel like an inflection point. Now, what do you
Yeah.
make of Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Well, before we move there, I just want to also
Oh, okay.
kudos to these airports: Las
Oh, yes,
Vegas,
I'm sorry.
Harry Reid International, Portland International, Seattle Tacoma International,
Yeah,
Charlotte Douglas International, and three in New York for refusing to play Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, in which she blames Democrats for a federal shutdown.
yeah.
So I think that courage is contagious. And, I don't know. Was it Jimmy Kimmel who started all this? Is he what's the line that Lincoln asked? Are you the little woman who started all this trouble? Is Jimmy Kimmel? Are we going to look back and say that was like the turning point, that Kimmel survived, and then all of a sudden people got some balls?
Boy, that's a really interesting question. Have you ever watched Jimmy Kimmel lately? Have you been watching his
I
monologues?
hear him, no, but I hear his ratings and his views are way up.
Well, you know what? Let me just recommend that if people, you can go back and watch them on YouTube. And I was just telling my wife the other day, what's really remarkable about Jimmy Kimmel is that he did stand that did feel like a turning point, and yet he is holding nothing back. I mean, if you go on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 dialing it up like I am not self-censoring myself in any way whatsoever. He's like at an 11 right now. So
Good for
I
him.
try to reverse engineer these things and think that when they put him on, did somebody from ABC or Disney say, "Now, Jimmy, we're gonna, give you your job back, give you your show back, but you kind of gotta dial it back. You kind of gotta hold back and everything." Well, if that conversation took place, he is not. It is out there. It's very point. It's as good as any of the commentary that you're going to see about the Trump administration. So, yeah, it does feel like it, and also the fact that he continues to be absolutely fearless as a voice of the opposition. That there are people who are traumatized by all of this. You see them all the time, once they've been threatened, you can kind of feel they kind of keep their heads down or they kind of hedge and fudge. Not Jimmy Kimmel. So I do think that to your point about courage being contagious, this is what we've been lacking. We've been lacking that collective action. When people look around and go, shit, if the law firms and the billionaires aren't standing up, why would I stand up? On the other hand, now you start to say, wow, Jimmy Kimmel is doing it. The news media has finally found it's bearing. The airports are saying no. The Pope is saying no. Universities are now.
Even Chuck Schumer is saying no.
Oh God, yeah. You're not gonna make me say anything nice about Chuck Schumer, but yeah, even Chuck Schumer is saying no. So it feels like we'll see if and that's why. And this is, by the way, is not my normal line. Normally, I kind of feel that the protests can be overhyped. I think that we can put too much significance. I just think that what happens this Saturday is going to matter. And it's going to matter not just the way it looks, but for the people who come out, because it is so crucial for people to go out and look around and go, you know what? I'm not alone. I'm not the crazy ones. To feel that they are not completely vulnerable, because the secret sauce of authoritarianism is to make people feel isolated and helpless,
Yeah.
right? To make them think that the government is irresistible. And there's a whole class of punditry that says, it's dark, it's over, democracy is dead, the American dream is over, why struggle? I mean, if people buy into that argument, then they win. By the way, can I make a TV recommendation? If you
Please.
haven't seen it, this Netflix, Famous Last Words with Jane Goodall,
Hmm.
very powerful. And
Nice.
she makes the point at the end about you need to keep fighting and not surrender. And this was filmed before she died with the ground rules that would not be aired until afterwards. And so that's kind of her final message. And I have to say, boy, talk about powerful and timely. So you can find it on Netflix. Famous
Yeah.
Last Words. We can go to do watch it.
I I think just to reiterate, I think that it would be great if a lot of people came out on Saturday, if they were peaceful, if they had American flags, and I wouldn't be opposed. I don't think you need to. I wouldn't do this in any way that's inauthentic or sacrilegious. But if you feel so led
Yeah,
to have a Bible verse or some religious imagery that's authentically part of your message, that would probably be a good thing, I would think, as well, as part of making this
great.
moral case, um, and not allowing MAGA to
I love it.
represent people who are protesting peacefully as radical leftist Antifa or whatever.
No, hold up a picture of the Pope with what he said about the way migrants should be
Yeah.
treated. And some of the things. I mean, I don't know whether you saw this, but the Pope actually is quoting Hannah Arendt
Uh,
about how tyrants distort truth and everything. I mean, he is to say that he is locked into the moment is putting it mildly. And again, I'm biased here because he's an American, but I find his language, the clarity of his language and what he is saying to be completely unambiguous. In the past, sometimes you have that sort of convoluted,
yeah.
it's translated from the Latin into Italian, into whatever, and it comes out and it's like, what? This guy,
Right.
you know what he says and you know what he means.
Yeah, and I mean, they hated Pope Francis. They called him a woke pope, but it sounds like Pope Leo has much more potential to kind of summon our better angels and the moral authority. That's the term. He has the moral authority. And so I would expect Trump, I'm surprised this hasn't happened more yet, and maybe I've just missed it,
Mm,
that Trump will go after him and attempt to
of course.
really. And, look, you could say, well, that would be stupid because there's X number of Catholic. That's what Trump does. He will take you down and try to, that's his MO. So I would expect,
Well, he
I
will
mean,
have, yeah, the other MAGA influencers too.
definitely. Definitely. All right. So you mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with MTG lately. She's been, I think, kind of courageously speaking out in favor of publishing the Epstein files. She's been critical of Trump. But the latest, I don't know if you saw this Washington Post story, Charlie. Marjorie Taylor Greene tearing into her own party says GOP men in Congress are, quote, weak. So let me just read you a little bit of this. Whereas President Trump has a very strong and dominant style, he's not weak at all. A lot of the men here in the House are weak, Greene said. There are a lot of weak Republican men, and they're more afraid of strong Republican women. So they always try to marginalize the strong Republican women that actually want to do something and actually want to achieve. Um, that this piece goes on to mention that MTG is pissed off because she was basically pushed out of the Senate race in Georgia. She wanted to run against Ossoff. And then MTG is mentioning Elise Stefanik, who you may recall was slated to be the United Nations ambassador until there was fear that her seat could go to a Democrat. And so they put Mike Walls in that. So MTG says, sounding like Gloria Steinem here, it was unbelievably insulting. I thought it was horrible. She slammed Johnson for giving Stefanik, who currently serves as chairwoman of the House Republican leadership, quote, some honorary bullshit role. He gets shafted. He gets rewarded, she said of Stefanik and Waltz. The incident smacked of unfairness to Greene, quote. She's a woman, so it was okay to do that to her somehow, Greene said. So, first of all, he's a feminist, big time. Second of all, didn't Donald Trump orchestrate this? Not Mike Johnson? Like, why is he being blamed all of a sudden?
Well, this is the thing to keep in mind about Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's obviously having some fun, obviously enjoying the attention, obviously feeling a little bit liberated, obviously all out of bleeps to give. But in the MAGA dynamic, just note that she's not going after Trump. She's going after people around him. The only thing she's broken with Trump directly on is the Epstein file. That seems to have been her break the glass moment. That okay, I'm breaking with you on that. And then once you're kind of out of this, and some of us sort of remember that feeling. Once you're kind of the chrysalis has been broken, you look around going, this is bullshit too, or I disagree with that as well. But everything she's saying though is consistent with MAGA based ideology, including frankly the Epstein files. So
and the ACA subsidies, which fits into, at least it fits into Steve Bannon's version of MAGA, which is let's be populist, let's reward our people with subsidies.
Yes, and that's why I think there's a really good chance that Trump will cave on all of that. Now the fiscal conservative Mike Johnson is still saying that's a boondoggle, but that's not inconsistent with the Bannon MAGA thing. There's a lot of ego that's going on here. You can tell a lot of bruised feeling. It's certainly entertaining to watch. But again, deep breath. Let's just remember she's still Marjorie Taylor Greene. There's not a new Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's just that the guns are turned in a slightly different direction. But her loyalty to Donald Trump is still intact. Most of her criticism, again, is not aimed at him. It's aimed, and that's permissible. In the Game of Thrones world of the Trump era, that you can there's a long list of things you can break with him on or break with his administration on. There are some lines you can't cross. The only one that she's close on is the Epstein files, because obviously, I continue to be amazed at how much political capital they are spending on them. Because I don't know, but what you think about this? I can't imagine there's anything in the Epstein files that MAGA is not going to find some way to rationalize or justify and stick with Donald Trump. They've swallowed so much so far. What do we think is possibly in those files that Donald Trump and Mike Johnson are thinking absolutely positively we cannot let those out?
And there's still
Monty's setting herself on fire,
And there's still a Democratic congresswoman out there who is elected that they haven't sworn in, and she would be, I think, a deciding vote on whether to release them. And it's so curious, isn't it?
Now, and Marjorie Taylor Greene called him out on this. Now, how long has it been? It's been like, 3 weeks or something? There's nothing subtle about this. Mike Johnson is so desperate not to have a vote on this. And that he's getting tremendous pressure from the Trump White House. He also knows that if there is a vote on this, there's going to be a jailbreak. I don't know. I'm not a vote counter. There'll be a lot of Republicans that are going to do it. And that would be a deeply embarrassing moment. Now, of course, what they could just do is they could just release the files heavily. They could do that, right? Make it go away. But apparently that wouldn't make it go away. By the way, speaking of just bizarre performances involving the Epstein file, Pam Bondi seems to be on this downward spiral since the moment that she had to reverse herself on that. I mean, I know the MAGA loved her performance, loved her, screeching, insulting, you know, insult dog performance. Um, but this is a person who has, I mean, what was your reaction to her appearance in front of the Senate? Because, and again, this is the audience of one. It's Cash
Yeah.
Patel did the same sort of thing, but it's embarrassing. And plus these indictments that are coming down. I mean, she is just out there twisting in the wind, utterly exposed.
Well, I found it hard to watch that hearing, Charlie, because I think it was sadly effective, and I think it's a sign that we have crossed into um, a new era, and it probably started. I think maybe it was. Trying to think of when this started. Was it so? Who was the Supreme Court justice who was accused
Kavanaugh.
of Kavanaugh, right? So he goes out in his hearing and he's got this moral indignation and he shows that he's a fighter. And I don't know if he's
And
innocent, then it was like kind of justifiable indignation. But whatever the case may be, I think he went out there and was much hotter than you normally are. Normally in these hearings, you're supposed to be calm and all of
yeah,
that. And it worked because I think it signaled to Trump that he was a fighter and it kind of galvanized Republicans around him. And I wonder if maybe, though, that was a turning point where now everybody who goes into one of these hearings is like, I'm going to go in and attack the Democrats asking the
exactly right.
questions. And it's obviously performative, but I found it very sad. And not that it was like I didn't find her cringe specifically. I was like sad that I think it actually is working. That was my takeaway.
Well, I'm not sure what working, but yes, I mean, obviously she's doing what she's supposed to do in Trump world. You're making a really interesting point that the rules have changed since that Kavanaugh hearing. Boy, I remember that day really well because in the morning of that day,
I think you and I were at the Texas Tribune
we
Festival
were.
at this point. We
I
were
yeah,
together, right?
we may have even had this conversation. Yeah, wow. In the morning, I thought he was done. By
Hmm.
the afternoon, when he came out with that, he turned it around. That's a very interesting point where you sort of draw the line. What strikes me is that sort of everybody knows that the rules are changed. Certainly, Trump world knows the rules are changed. The Senate Democrats haven't figured that out yet.
I
They do.
totally agree. I
They
totally agree.
they are still bringing their checkers board
Yeah.
to the Thunderdome, and they're
You know,
sitting there going, okay, so I am prepared to play this elaborate game. And Cash Patel and Pam Bondi punch them in the face. And then they go back and they think, maybe we ought to work on our chess and checker skills. No, you understand the game is completely different. And so at some point, these guys have to like get together in a room, put their egos in a box and figure out how are we going to navigate a completely new world. And this has been the problem, I think, of congressional Democrats is they are conventional politicians who continue to behave as if this is conventional politics. The Trump people are playing a completely different game. They know what
yep,
the game is, and yet these senior Democrats just look like they weren't fully prepared for that
totally
kind of
agree.
event.
Totally agree. But Charlie, you know what the answer is? If Democrats are looking for someone who can butch up, who can go mano a mano and give people shit and be mean, just as mean and nasty. The Democrats, you know who that is, right, Charlie?
What are you gonna say?
Katie, Katie Porter. That's the answer to all of this.
Okay, that was good.
Because
I thought you were going to say something like Mark. Okay, did people know the Katie Porter story because she's the leading Democratic candidate for governor in
yeah, yep,
California. She was the kind of a star among congressional Democrats. You remember that picture of her, kind of an iconic picture where she's reading the book. what was it, like, I don't give a fuck or something like that.
Yeah,
But everybody
something
thought,
like that.
and
Yeah.
she's wicked smart, right? I mean, she's really, really, really smart, and apparently a really awful human being.
Not a good
I mean,
boss. Not a good boss.
not a
Uh,
good boss. And apparently feels that she can behave like that on camera. So why don't you tell
yeah.
the story, because we probably
All
got it
right.
better.
So, yeah, there's several data points here we need to talk about. First, Politico obtained a video reporter berating a staffer in 2021 for entering her live shot while she was recording a video with Jennifer Granholm. So somebody's walking behind her. I wouldn't even care. I'm like, it shows like I've got stuff happening. It's like an office, but she was like, get the F out of my shot. So very mean, sort of like Ari Gold from Entourage kind of stuff. Or actually, who was the senator who had to eat a salad with a comb?
Oh,
Do you remember that story?
yeah. Well, okay, but that story, that incident would not have registered at all if it wasn't for the earlier CBS interview where she's
Yeah.
being asked pretty straightforward questions about California politics, and she goes off on, I mean, look, I mean, the fact that Trump and Vance and those guys can go off is one thing. She just went off on this reporter, and it was not a good look. Now,
No.
has she paid a political price? I mean,
Well, let
I,
me and let me say it's also um, so this is a pattern now, right? There's a fact pattern here,
yeah,
and
that's the
and
problem. It's a pattern.
according to her husband, who filed a restraining order against her, that
This,
she would routinely call him an effing idiot, wouldn't let him have
uh,
his cell phone because she said you're too effing dumb to operate it, and allegedly poured scalding mashed potatoes on him. This is her ex-husband. So we have multiple incidents. Some of it is caught on video now of her berating staff and being mean to people. Um, and I think now we have I don't know. I don't know if if she's going to fall in the polls, but what I can tell you is that I think the knives are out for her. I mean, it
oh,
suggests
yeah.
to me that the call is coming from inside the house. These are former staffers who are they have the goods on her and they're leaking on her. And so what else might they have that has not yet been released?
So, since I'm making television recommendations, last night I watched the new documentary about John Candy, which I would
Yes, it
all
was on Amazon,
strong,
Amazon, right? Yeah.
yeah, strongly recommend. And one of the ways they describe him is that John Candy was a kind person who always judged people by the way they treated, producers, staff, waiters and waitresses, because they were once poor, they were once hungry. And he made it a point to always treat people as well as possible. And he would judge other people by the way they treated them. And I apply that standard to Katie Porter, that this, I mean, look, maybe in modern politics, personality, character does not matter for anyone. Consider the number of assholes we have in public life, but it was a tell, and I think that's what people saw, which is that this is just not a very nice person. Now, maybe again, maybe we don't want nice people. Maybe we don't want kind people. Maybe we don't want respectful people. I mean, look, JD Vance. We talk about, now switch to JD Vance. Now, JD Vance, did you see him with George Stephanopoulos? This is the
Yes.
vice president of the United States. First of all, what an outstanding interview by George Stephanopoulos. But I'm not going to imagine people saying, "Why are you, railing on Katie Porter when you have Cash Patel, total asshole, Pam Bondi, total asshole, JD Vance, total asshole, Donald Trump, need I say more?" Um, but can we just talk about that? That George Stephanopoulos, talk about another guy who's not holding back anything. I mean, that interview was kind of a masterclass. It was almost British journalist style of, like,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep asking you this question. I'm going to give you the follow up.
So for
JD
example, he
Vance,
would say
idiot.
Donald
Yeah.
Donald Trump says that Governor so and so should go to jail or should be arrested. Did you agree with
Yeah.
that? What has he done? And then following up is the key, right? You've got to ask that question
Follow. Right.
multiple times. And these hosts, as you know, Charlie, because you've done probably more
Yeah.
cable news than I have, um, there's a hesitancy because time on cable news, time is not even cable news. This is network news too, but like
Yeah,
time is of the essence. And so if you're a host, you've got a list of 20 questions to get through. And if you keep asking someone the same question that they keep not answering, it's seen as bad TV. People might turn the channel, you're not getting
yeah.
anywhere. But you've got to ask those follow-ups. That's key. And keep
And
asking.
yeah, and JD Vance was just in complete denial, would not address the question of like, did Tom Homan take a $50,000 bribe? And he's pretending he doesn't. He said, well, there's no evidence of it whatsoever. Excuse me, there's an FBI tape of him accepting it. So then the questions are, well, did he take the money? Did he not take the money? And JD Vance clearly either was not prepared or was counting on the fact that he could filibuster. And this is the superpower that politicians have over journalists. People think that, you know, they are the victims of an aggressive journalist. Actually, most guys like JD Vance know that if they can avoid the question for 2 or 3 beats, then everybody moves on. Stephanopoulos did not move on. So it was a bravura performance, I thought.
But I would also say JD Vance is an incredibly skilled liar, skater. I think to you, I see you, wince there, and I think to you and me, we watch it and we're like, this guy's full of it. This guy's
Yeah.
a
And
phony.
Wincy is skilled liar. Like it's an
But I
art form.
wonder,
Like it's a
but
figure
I'll put it to
skating.
you this way: in terms of degree of difficulty, and I used to teach people. I literally, my job used to be training political candidates how to run for office, including how to communicate. And back then, um, what I would teach them is, figure out what issues you went on, what topics you went on. And so if they ask you about something like that you're not good at, they ask you a question about education, you say, that's a great question. We've got a plan that's coming out. But when I travel around, the moms and dads I talk to tell me the most important thing to them is crime. And that's why we're going
Yeah.
to focus on. So like we were changing the subject, but there was at least some, we were at least entertaining the original question.
Yeah.
And there was an element of truth to it. It wasn't complete lying and obfuscation, but like when I watched JD Vance, I'm actually kind of impressed because I literally couldn't. If I was a spokesman or a, paraclete or whatever, like I literally couldn't bring myself to do what he. So I'm kind of impressed. I'm more impressed than angry, actually.
I work not to be impressed at violence. I think this is part of this is something that I think that we actually do need to talk about. And I think Matt, my personal advice is that the time when you were a flat type, just take that off your resume.
It's not on my resume.
Yeah, yeah. It should be like, truth teller, honest, handling your honest broker. I understand but I think we need to understand the phrase skilled liar. Um,
And let me
he has,
just say, let me say,
no,
I wrote a book.
I get you. I get
Well,
your
no, I
point.
wrote a book
I'm
way
just,
back
yeah.
when about it was like Bill Press or someone like that wrote this book. It might have been Paul Bagala. It was called like Spin. Was I think
Yes.
the name of the book, and they said in the book that it was like Spin is not lying. It is putting your best face forward. But I think that there was a certain playfulness, gamesmanship associated with the old school spinning of changing the subject in a way that was maybe clever or to a non sequitur. Now it is just on steroids, right?
Well, it's the brazenness. It is the shamelessness. It is the confidence that I can look right in the camera and I can lie and I can get away with it. I I guess I'm not going to be in the camp of going, wow, that was really brazen. That was the most audacious lie, but well done.
Well, I'm not writing columns congratulating JD Vance on his, lying, but I will say I couldn't do it. I mean, I
No,
could
I couldn't do it
not
either.
do it. And
No, and so you can. There's a certain grudging admiration for somebody that
yes,
can. No, I'm
it's
grudging, but
impressive.
not admiring. Yeah, these people they continue to do something. I mean, the way they have distorted reality into their own image is kind of breathtaking. I'm going to stick with the awful part of it, but you can see that they are creatures of that belief that the alternative reality silo is so great that they can get away with a lie. Um, and there's a certain confidence that gives them that did not exist a few years ago. Um, And of course, it all comes back to the fact that we have millions of people who are either completely disengaged or who watch this, know they're being lied to, and don't care they're being lied to. And that's a dilemma that we're going to have to live with for a very long time.
Let me, if I could summarize our conversation so far, and then are you game to take some questions in a minute from
Oh, absolutely. I'm always
the
game.
peanut
Yeah,
gallery? Okay. So if you've got some, save them up. I'll put my glasses on here in a second, my reading glasses. And, but to some, I feel like, eh, part of what we've talked about today is that there is this kind of, there's a moral case that is coming up to be made. And when it comes to the Katie, I want to go back to the Katie Porter story too. I think that you need to be mean and you need to be a fighter. You need to be tough, but don't direct that toward your interns or your staffers, people who are vulnerable. That you're in this. There's a power dynamic that is asymmetric, and that's why I think you were saying about John Candy. I tell my sons, they're not quite to dating age yet, but like if someone's rude to the waiter or waitress,
yes.
that's a tell. That's game over. That's a deal breaker. And so I think Democrats should want someone who can go toe to toe with, the Pam Bondis and the Marjorie Taylor Greens and be tough and nasty to them. But don't be mean to staff or interns. And I would also say, from a purely, even if you don't care about values or being a good person, and I think you obviously should, but even if you don't care, I can't tell you, Charlie, how many there are people who are like interns for me who then became like the assistant to a network president or the
Yeah,
Wall
you
Street
don't
Journal
know.
editorial board. Like, you never
Yeah,
know where they're going to go in 10
that's
years. An
right.
intern today
Yeah.
could be an important person tomorrow. So,
Yeah,
all right.
I agree. I mean, there's a really good distinction. Do not confer being a confuse being a total asshole to working people, to people who are, around you with being the champion for values that you want to be out there in the arena. Not really, no.
All right. Questions for Charlie. Now's the time. I will endeavor to read some. If you've got some comments, questions, thank you, Charlie and Matt. You're welcome. Um, well, let me ask you this, Charlie. This is not a question from the Peanut Gallery yet,
Yeah.
but did you see that the Texas National Guard? There were videos about how the Texas National Guard was too fat, and it was kind of, I think, mocking Pete Hegseth. And but now some of them, reportedly, some of these Texas National Guard have now been recalled or whatever
The
because
fat ones.
they don't meet the standards. Do you think there should be, for you and me, should there be some sort of a weight requirement, some pull-ups, something like that?
Yes, I think there should be, and I think it should apply to everybody, including the president of the United States. But this is one of those weird things. Is you have Pete Hegseth talking about fat generals and fat admirals. He's standing right next to Donald Trump. It's like, hey, can we just have a little bit of perspective? Yeah, that's. I'm really glad that we're all focusing on the most important things with the Texas National Guard. And by the way, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel who made the point that Texas National Guardsmen were um, filmed going to Illinois, and they were all wearing camouflage fatigues. And he said just a kind of a pro tip that wearing camouflage fatigues is not going to make you blend in Chicago.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, Noem is the classic example of this. She just, is so good at wearing those costumes. Really, it's cosplay. Um, so a couple people wanted to know if we are going to No Kings. I went last time. I may go again. If I go, it'll probably be Shepherdstown. You are going. Where did
I
you
am
say
going
you're
to
going
go
again?
Cedarburg, Wisconsin. I am going to go up there because you know what? It's like, people keep saying, what do you do? And so you and I do a lot of things. We do this, we write and everything. But sometimes I think we just need to go out. And quite frankly, one of the reasons I want to see the other people. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's the crucial part. Who is the audience for this? I mean, all of America, but also the participants. The power of realizing you're not alone cannot be overstated.
I have to say, I mean, in all honesty, and maybe this is my conservative background, I've never been a protester, person. I've
Oh,
always something about it always turned me off. But I went to that last one, and it wasn't angry at all. It was a communal, like Americana thing, and it was kind of enjoyable. I don't know if it will be that way this time because things have happened. And I have to say too. I mean, I assume that some people may be afraid to go, or that maybe I shouldn't even
no, people can't.
put that in the
Okay,
ether.
well, no, in the back of your mind, and this is one of those questions where you always ask yourself, what am I prepared to do? Um, this is kind of de minimis. I will say that going out in a crowd like this is out of my comfort zone because I am an only child who
Me
spends
too.
almost all my time here in my basement doing stuff. So this is not something that comes naturally, you know. But it's also with the test, if everything was on the line, what would you be prepared to do to defend American freedom? And everybody has these bold things. I don't know, getting out of my house and driving up to Cedarburg and standing on the street corner is, I mean, it's not exactly like, getting off the landing ships at Normandy, right? I mean, come on. Let's, this is, this is not the scariest thing that we're ever going to do. It's not the greatest, most courageous thing that we're ever going to do, but it is the necessary thing that we have to do.
And I see a few people have pointed out that you and I are probably privileged to not be dragged away by. Someone said I'm brown, so if anybody has a right to be afraid, it's that person more than
Okay,
Matt Lewis.
no, listen, that's a legitimate point, and I actually did my actual podcast with a reporter down in Chicago, and I found myself, saying, well, if I go down to Chicago, what am I going to see on the street? And we sort of got into this way. I can see people going to restaurants and everybody's walking around and everything. And then I thought, okay, wait, um, we're ignoring the fact that there are thousands, if not millions, of people in this country right now who are afraid to go out, who are living in fear, who know that if they go to the store, that they might be snatched, or if they go and they visit their mother, that that somebody might demand their papers. And in many ways, this is one of the biggest stories in the country right now, but it's virtually invisible because they're not going out. They are afraid to do that. We have people who are afraid of their government. And so, yeah, I think that's a legitimate point. Um, in fact, so I don't find that a snarky point at all. That,
Would you? Let me ask you this:
we're, yeah,
would you bring your kids if they were 10, 15 years
yeah,
old?
absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
bring your kids,
Yeah.
bring your flag, bring your Bible. Uh,
Bring your grandma.
Bring your grandma. And someone, I saw a story just today. There was a person whose last name is Greeley who was apprehended by ICE despite the fact that this person had their papers, was adopted by, I guess, a white family. And so, yeah, it's crazy. There was a funny comment. We need all the humor we can get. We were talking about the National Guard and Pete Hegseth, and somebody referred to, quote, meal Team 6. Um, maybe we shouldn't fat shame the
Okay,
National Guard, but I found that funny. I'm going to say it. I'm going to cop to it.
go for
Um,
it.
Someone wanted to know what should Schumer do differently. I'm assuming this is about the shutdown.
No, this is above my pay grade. I Schumer's main problem is that he's a poor communicator. And I think I was actually thinking about this the other day that, when we talked about was Biden a good president or was he not a good president? If you evaluate presidents, in 19th century terms or in terms of the number of bills they pass, pieces of legislation, I think you missed the point because the presidency is also the biggest bully pulpit in the world, and you have to be a communicator in this current environment. Chuck Schumer is a conventional politician who continues to practice conventional politics. And so it's not like I think Schumer should do X, Y, or Z. It's like I think sometimes the right man meets the moment, and sometimes no, it's not you. This is not. This
Yeah.
is about your moment. I did not disagree with Chuck Schumer's decision to keep the government open earlier this year. I actually very reluctantly thought he probably made the right decision. I think he's making the right decision right now. I still don't know what his exit strategy is on all of this. I wish it was somebody who I thought understood the moment more clearly and could communicate it more clearly. But I don't always get what I want. You know that feeling, Matt?
I do all the time. Um, so someone said, put it simply, what should Schumer do differently? Retire. That sums up your comment. And someone said, step aside and let's like a Chris Murphy type take. I don't know if he's the right man for the job either, but certainly a step in the right direction. Awesome. So, okay, I think the Peanut Gallery has alerted me that I will be going to a No Kings rally on Saturday. So let me just encourage you, cheer me on there. Follow me on Substack. Follow Charlie Sykes on Substack. If you're following me and you're not following him, what the hell's wrong with you? Charlie Sykes, final thoughts, man.
Right. Okay, yeah, I'm going to be wearing my no Kingston 1776 hat, so in case anybody's out there in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. Actually, this was a surprisingly upbeat conversation that you and I had, thinking about taking back the flag, taking back patriotism, taking back faith, taking back Christianity, and what a peaceful resistance can look like. I am hoping there's a big turnout on Saturday, and I hope it is a dramatic and eloquent refutation of all this bullshit we're getting about, the Hate America rallies and all of that. If people see Americans of all walks of life, with kids and baby strollers and American flags, all of that, I think that that'll be a reminder that, that we're not alone and that these guys don't necessarily speak for America.
I love it. I feel like there's a theme. It was a little all over the place, but you summarized it. There was a theme to this episode. We're doing it every Tuesday. So hopefully we'll be back here.
Well, we'll have an after-action report next Tuesday.
Let's do it.
Okay?
Yeah, I love that.
Talk about our experiences, okay? What happened? Matt and Charlie go to No Kings. What happened? All right?
Sykes and Lewis. Awesome, my friend. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thanks, Charlie. See you next week.